Hey, Emmy. All right. Leviticus chapter number 4. Leviticus chapter number 4. Book's been pretty riveting, hasn't it? There's a lot of, it seems like it kind of repeats itself, here and there. And this is definitely one of those chapters that as you go through it, you'll see that it breaks down into 4 people groups. The priest, the population of people, and then people in power, and then what we would call just an individual person, common person, is how this chapter's broken down. But really, this chapter deals with the person that generally is under the submission of God. Generally somebody that is walking with the Lord. And listen, here's the thing. Sometimes they take a misstep. Sometimes you think you're doing the right thing and you're doing the wrong thing. You say, give me an example of that. I will say this. If you're to drive up 27 and you are going to, now this isn't the instance for everywhere, but if you were to get into the city limits of Science Hill, if you're driving on 27, the speed limit, is the speed limit on 27 in Science Hill, is the speed limit on 27 in Science Hill, is it 45 or 55? As you're passing like Hardee's and all that, 55? At certain times of the day, though, it's not. At certain times of the day, it's 35, and if the lights are flashing, is it 25? 25 through the school zone. And if you don't pay attention to those flashing lights, you'll have some flashing lights behind you. And here's the thing. Somebody could just honestly be driving what the quote-unquote general speed limit is, and they're not meaning to do any harm. They just weren't paying attention. But here's the thing. People like Larry don't care about that. You broke the law, right? You broke the law. So there has to be a consequence. Now, I mean, as long as you're a pretty level-headed person, you don't try to get, rowdy, I'm sure Larry may let you off with a warning. I don't know. But here's the thing. You got pulled over anyways. And now everybody at the school sees you got pulled over. So there's a consequence. Here's the thing. God doesn't look at any sin that we commit and say, don't worry about it. No, that's how we look at it. What's the common saying? Well, I'm just human. I'm only human, right? God says, no. There still has to be an atonement for it. And he says there in verse number 1, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, if a soul shall sin through ignorance against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning things which ought not to be done, and shall do against any of them. So if any person, and you'll find out as we go through this chapter, as we just kind of broke it down, the chapter does, nobody gets a pass. Nobody gets a free pass. As a matter of fact, what you're really going to find is you're going to find the first group of people mentioned are the ones that in the New Testament also are the ones that are held to a higher accountability. And so what's it say? If a soul shall sin through ignorance. Sinning through ignorance is sinning without really the intent to do wrong. It just kind of happened. It was unintentional. I wasn't trying to go out, and it was maybe just a mix-up. You lashed out in anger. Maybe something happened and you lashed out in anger, and that's generally not who you are. Would that could happen, couldn't it? Could happen with people. You take something the wrong way that somebody says, and we all have a problem with doing this. We insinuate things, and then there you go. If a soul shall sin through ignorance, and look at what's so interesting. Who's the first people group? Verse number 3. If the priest. Now wait a second. The guy that is going on behalf of the people to God to atone for their sins, right? Not him physically going to atone, but he is bringing the blood and bringing the sacrifice to the Lord. So if the priest, verse number 3, that is anointed, now there's argument over, is this... I think it's when you go back to Exodus chapter 29, really the only one that it says there is that Aaron was anointed. Now, were all of them anointed? I believe so. I believe they were all anointed. I just don't think Scripture really goes into depth of them being anointed as well. But when you start looking at the tabernacle, everything was anointed, right? So I don't think that any of the priests are going to be allowed to go in there unless they've been anointed too. That's just my own personal opinion. But it says, if the priest, and I think if it was only the high priest, it would just say, if the high priest. If the priest that is anointed do sin according to the sin of the people, then let him bring for his sin which he has sinned. He's got to own up to it. Which he has sinned, a young bullock without blemish unto the Lord for a sin offering. I have a feeling that if the priest was to sin quite often, it would cost him heavily. And that's really the point behind it. It's kind of insinuated. A bullock at that time would have been, is still to this day, an expensive animal. And if you continue to live in this just, I'm going to practice this type of sin. And I know this is the sin of ignorance, but he still has to have an atonement for his sin. And so if you willfully sin, or if you sin out of ignorance a lot, then you are going to have to pay very heavily, for the wages of sin is death. It says that, then let him bring, halfway through verse number 3, then let him bring for his sin, which he has sinned, a young bullock without blemish unto the Lord for a sin offering. And he shall bring the bullock unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord, and shall lay his hand upon the bullock's head and kill the bullock before the Lord. So, could you imagine how... If you're the high priest, or if you're the priest, and you have sinned, we got people that won't even come to the altar because of what other people think about them. Could you imagine being this guy? And he's bringing his young bullock to be offered, and here's the thing: people are watching. People are watching. And people's like, wait a second, we go to that guy for our sins to be forgiven, right? This is a transparent lifestyle. Listen, everybody sins, guys, and I'm not saying that it's just, we should just, everybody does it. No, I'm saying everybody falls short. Everybody misses the mark. That's what sin means. Miss the mark. We all miss the mark. What's the mark? The glory of God, right? So if we all fall short of the glory of God, if we all miss that mark, then it should not be a surprise whenever a priest has to come and offer a sacrifice for his sin out of ignorance. And so it says there that he shall lay, I love this, and shall lay his hand upon the bullock's head. Now, we've talked about this many times, but I want to tell you what Charles Spurgeon had to say about this, because this guy really thought about it. He preached a message off of just that phrase, laying on of the hand. He had 2 points. One was the meaning of the symbol, of that symbol, and then the second one was the simplicity of that symbol. The meaning of the symbol, it was a confession of sin. We don't like to do that. But it was a confession of sin. It was a consent to the plan of the substitution. This is the substitution that's going to, the plan of the substitution. This is what I'm going to use, and I have to because that's the plan. It was the acceptance of that victim in the sinner's place. He's got 2 more points to this. It was a belief in the transference of the sin. You literally had to believe. And now, here's the thing. And I love this. It was a dependence, a leaning on the victim. We think you just come by and, no. We were talked about pressing. And so you have to lean upon the victim. Leaning on the everlasting arms. Now, the simplicity of the symbol. There was no preparatory ceremony. You didn't have to get ready for nothing. You just had to bring you didn't have to clean your hands or nothing. There was to be nothing in his hands. Just his hands. There can't be nothing in the way of transference. There was nothing to be done with the hand except to lay it. And there was nothing to be done to the man's hand. That's thinking a lot about it, ain't it? It's a good phrase. It's a good thought. But there's a lot that goes into that. And could you imagine? You're staring into this animal's eyes, and you know that it has to die because of what you've done. That's tough. That's tough. Because you know that animal had nothing to do with what you have done. Verse number 5. And the priest that is anointed shall take of the bullock's blood and bring it to the tabernacle of the congregation. Watch this. And the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle the blood 7 times before the Lord, before the veil of the sanctuary. So that big beautiful veil that we have talked about that separated the holy place and the Holy of Holies, the priest had to literally dip his finger in the blood and fling it. Literally just sprinkle it on the veil. Could you imagine that? Why would you have to do that? I tell you this, it's only by the blood that we'll have access to the Father. And so look at what happens next. It says, before the veil of the sanctuary, verse number 7, and the priest shall put some of the blood upon the horns of the altar of sweet incense before the Lord, which is in the tabernacle of the congregation. What was that? What was that altar supposed to really illustrate? Prayer, right? That incense would be burnt. And really, when we talked about that in I think it's Luke chapter number 2, and what was that guy's name? I'll think of it here in a minute. But when he went in to burn the incense at the altar, and everybody would be standing outside, and they would be looking at the temple and seeing that smoke rise up and go up towards heaven. That was a picture. That was an illustration of our prayers going up to heaven. Listen, we can't talk to God unless the blood is applied. We have no way. John chapter number 9, verse number 31, I think it is. God heareth not sinners, right? So how are we going to talk to God? Well, we got to become saints, right? How do we do that? By what He did. We got to believe that He died for us. Which is halfway through, which is in the tabernacle, verse number 7, which is in the tabernacle of the congregation, and shall pour all the blood of the bullock at the bottom of the altar of the burnt offering, which is at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. So you have in 3 places, you had the priests that had to do this. Now, there's little subtle differences between this and then the population and the people in power, and then also the common person. There's subtle differences in between. You'll notice that animals is one of the differences, and what they do is another one of the differences. But so you have there's blood sprinkled on the veil. That is entrance into God's presence. You have blood being applied to the horns of the altar of sweet incense before the Lord. That is, the blood is applied in an illustration of the prayers of the saints, and then you also have it is poured out at the bottom of the altar of the burnt offering. That is a payment for our sin. So you have 3 different ways. That's just the priest. Now the priest is mentioned first because in James chapter number 3, we are told that anybody that wants to teach the Bible, Anybody who wants to be a preacher, be a pastor, be a Bible teacher is going to be held at a greater condemnation. That is a greater judgment than people that do not teach the Bible. So these are representatives of God. The priests are representatives of God in this instance. Verse number 8, it goes down to verse number 12, talking about the priest. And he shall take off from it all the fat of the bullock for the sin offering, the fat that covereth the inwards, and all the fat that is upon the inwards, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, which is by the flanks, and the caul above the liver with the kidneys, it shall he take away, as it was taken off from the bullock of the sacrifice of peace offerings. And the priest shall burn them upon the altar of the burnt offering, and the skin of the bullock and all his flesh, with his head and with his legs and his inwards and his dung, even the whole bullock shall he carry forth without the camp unto a clean place, where the ashes are poured out, and burn him on the wood with fire, where the ashes are enough, right? But we're Baptist, right? And we like meals, right? Yeah. I mean, is it enough that we just have right standing with God and we don't get anything out of the ordeal? Think about that. It should be more than enough, right? But I just don't know if we're like that all the time. Anybody got anything? Verse number 13. And if the whole congregation of Israel sin through ignorance, and the thing be hid from the eyes of the assembly, and they have done somewhat against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning things which should not be done, and are guilty, when the sin which they have sinned against it is known, then the congregation shall offer a young bullock for the sin. Teaching on the book of Leviticus. Oh, wow, really? And literally, everybody thinks it's a yawner. Everybody thinks it's a snooze fest. And listen, I know a lot of preachers that have booked, they have went through and done commentaries on almost every single book, and this is one of the last ones they'll go to. Because everybody's got this mindset that, wow, it's just like, hitting the alarm clock. Let's just get through it. And it's not that way. It's not that. There is real application in this book. There's some real good stuff. People in power and the common person, why can't we just all do it all the same? God says, you better listen to me. Because if this isn't done to the way that I expect it to be done, I won't forgive sin. But we just kind of, especially in this hour, are all doing the same thing. Well, you're going to have to just get some elders. And the elders of the congregation shall lay their hands upon the head of the bullock before the Lord, and the bullock shall be killed before the Lord. And the priest that is anointed shall bring of the bullock's blood to the tabernacle of the congregation. The priest shall dip his finger in some of the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord, even before the veil. So same thing there. And he shall put some of the blood upon the. And I'm just going to throw this out there because I have a feeling that there's some kind of a connection, but I cannot make it. And I don't know what it would even be. But it mentions dipping his finger in the blood. And then you get into Luke chapter number, I think it's 16, and you got a rich man asking if Lazarus can dip his finger in water to cool his tongue. There has to be some sort. Listen, here's the thing. If I'm in hell and I'm asking for anything, it's not just a drop. Right? I'm asking for the ice machine down here in Nancy to be free and placed in the place where I'm at. Does that make sense? I don't know what the connection would be. I don't even know if there is one, but it just kept playing through my mind over the past few days as I was looking over this, and I was like, man, that sure is interesting. And it may not be. I don't know. You may not like that, but there they are. Verse number 16, and the priest that is anointed shall bring of the bullock's blood to the tabernacle of the congregation, and the priest shall dip his finger in some of the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord, even before the veil. He shall put some of the blood upon the thorns, upon the horns of the altar, which is before the Lord, that is in the tabernacle of the congregation, shall pour out all the blood at the bottom of the altar of the burnt offering, which is at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. He shall take all his fat from him and burn it upon the altar. Now, here's the thing. Some of these, the priest would get some of the food, but in the one where he is having to pay to atone for his sin, he gets nothing. Now, some of these, they bring this, and he does get some of the food. But I think it's very interesting that he goes first. And then it's the entire congregation of people. It's pretty interesting, ain't it? How it's laid out. I mean, you go from one guy to everybody, right? In just a few short verses. And there's just a little bit of differences between the two. But he says there in verse number 20, and he shall do with the bullock as he did with the bullock for a sin offering, so shall he do with this, and the priest shall make an atonement for them, and it shall be forgiven them. What a great statement that is. That's actually said 3 more times in this chapter. That it shall be, if you'll do everything the way that God tells you to do it, you'll be forgiven. Isn't there a big debate on how to be saved? Yeah. Some of it is Calvinism. Listen, Calvinism isn't biblical. You know why it's not called? That's not called salvation? Because a man created it. It's not called Bible. Biblical salvation is repent and believe. And really, you can sum that up into one word: believe. Because when you believe, you have changed your mind about who Jesus is and about what he's done for you. Now, I'm not about easy believism. I'll just believe there's a God and everything, you know. I believe Jesus, man, and that's a bunch of hocus pocus. There has to be a time when you truly believe with all your heart on Christ to be saved. If there's no change, there's no change. There's no salvation. He says there in verse number 21, he shall carry forth a bullock without the camp and burn him as he burned the first bullock. It is a sin offering for the congregation. Could you imagine walking out there, being the guy that carries all these ashes and all this stuff out there to burn, and seeing all this ash laying out there? Could you imagine walking up on that? That innocence. Looking for all this guilt. I mean, the sins of the world, guys. This is just for the nation of Israel. This wasn't even for Gentile people. This was just for them. This was their promise. This was their substitution and the ceremonial laws and all that place. Listen, Jesus come and died. He died for all. Anybody got anything? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as you continue to go, you see the animal lessons. It'll be a goat, and then it'll be a lamb. And then it doesn't matter what gender it is. It can be male or female, as long as it doesn't have blemish. It is interesting that there's so much focus on the guy that represents man to God, And so that's the really, I believe the emphasis is through the subtleties that you see there that you picked up on, and it will. And the thing about it is the third guy. You would think that he would have, it's got to be the same as the priest, the guy in power. I mean, the ruler. Well, what does he have to give? Well, it says there in verse 22, when a ruler has sinned and done somewhat through ignorance against any of the commandments of the Lord his God concerning things which should not be done, and is guilty, or if his sin wherein he has sinned come to his knowledge. But let me ask you, how do you feel whenever the Holy Spirit tells you, hey, you've committed a sin that you need to get right with Jesus? You know what a lot of people do? I'll deal with it later. We're in a dangerous time, a very dangerous time, where we just wink at sin and think, well, God, He saved me and I don't have to worry about that anymore. It'll be all right. It'll be all right. God, you know what you're saying? God, you're just going to have to be okay with it. And God says, I am not okay with sin. I'm not okay with you just swiping the grace credit card and just continuing to live however you want to live. That's not okay. Listen, that's why He's going to come and He's going to judge these nations. So many people will skip out on the first time to be saved. Holy Spirit will be convicting them. Come to Jesus. And then they want another opportunity. What if there is no more? I mean, God doesn't even have to give us a single chance, right? And not only do we sin because we've inherited that sin nature, but we also sin because we choose to sin. He says, verse number 23, if it has sinned, come to his knowledge, he shall bring his offering, a kid of the goats, a male without blemish. And you would think that, Donald Trump was the sin. He needs to, go up there and give a bullock. No, God says, here's the thing. The legislature, the people in government offices are not over the people. See, there's no respecter of persons with God. Now, some are held to a higher judgment, but there's no respecter of person. We would think that this guy would be the one that would be, he's not before the population of people, right? He actually doesn't even have to give a bullock. He just got to give a little goat, a kid goat, a male without blemish. He shall lay his hand upon the head of the goat, killed in the place where they kill the burnt offering before the Lord. It is a sin offering. And the priest shall take of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it upon the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and shall pour out his blood at the bottom of the altar of burnt offering. He shall burn all his fat upon the altar as the fat of the sacrifice of peace offerings. And the priest shall make an atonement for him as concerning the sin, and it shall be forgiven him. Here's the thing. He doesn't take the blood in and sprinkle it on the veil. See the subtle differences? And right there he just said that in verse 26, and he shall burn all his fat upon the altar as the fat of the sacrifice of peace offering. So now, here's the thing, the person in power, the government official, doesn't get any of this, but the priest does. So now it's like, if I'm the priest, I get something out of this because somebody else sinned. Isn't that kind of like a crazy way of looking at it? But it's true. I get a portion of that meat because he sinned. That's interesting, ain't it? Doesn't God get this? He gets these offerings. It's a sweet savor, right? He gets these offerings. Now, I will say, we shouldn't go out and sin against the Lord. But did it not please him to bruise his own son? There had to be an atonement. There has to be an atonement, right? So, but again, there it says in the end of verse 26, and it shall be forgiven him, as long as he'll do it this way. Now, here's the thing. What about your separation of church and state? You know, that's not even in the Constitution. It was in a letter that somebody had written, that two people had written back and forth. The separation of church and state. Let me give you a piece of advice about separation of church and state. God sent Nathan the prophet to David the king. So there's no separation of church and state. None whatsoever. God is involved in politics. But what does church people want to happen? Oh, don't you say anything. Don't you say anything. You can't say nothing about abortion. You can't say nothing about these liberals. You can't say nothing about that. Listen, I'm not trying to get you to vote Republican or Democrat. Here's what I'd like for you to vote. Vote biblically. Just do that. You know, honest to goodness, you shouldn't even have to get up here and get on a rant about politics. You really shouldn't. This really isn't the place for it. It's really not. But I will say this, politics put him on the cross. I know ultimately sin did, but politics was a driving force to that as well. Remember, they delivered him in vain. They did not like him. Or envy. They did not like him. Verse 27, here we are, just common people. And if any one of the common people sin through ignorance, while he doeth somewhat against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning things which ought not to be done, and be guilty, or if his sin which he has sinned come to his knowledge, then he shall bring his offering, a kid of the goats, a female without blemish, for his sin which he has sinned. He shall lay his hand upon the head of the sin offering, and slay the sin offering in the place of the burnt offering. And the priest shall take of the blood thereof with his finger, and put it upon the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and shall pour out all the blood thereof at the bottom of the altar. He shall take away all the fat thereof. As the fat is taken away from off the sacrifice of peace offerings, and the priest shall burn it upon the altar for a sweet savor unto the Lord. And the priest shall make an atonement for him, and it shall be forgiven him. And if he bring a lamb, so if you couldn't bring a kid of the goats, but if you had a lamb for a sin offering, he shall bring in a female without blemish, and he shall lay his hand upon the head of the sin offering, and slay it for a sin offering in the place where they kill the burnt offering. And the priest shall take of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, put it upon the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and shall pour out all the blood thereof at the bottom of the altar. He shall take away all the fat thereof, as the fat of the lamb is taken away from the sacrifice of the peace offerings, and the priest shall burn them upon the altar according to the offerings made by fire unto the Lord. The priest shall make an atonement for his sin that he hath committed, and it shall be forgiven him. It's a lot, ain't it? That's a lengthy chapter. But as you look at it, and you think back at all four of those people groups, you know, you look at Jesus as he's the high priest, right? He's our high priest. He makes intercession for us. That's what a high priest will do. Jesus as a high priest never committed a sin. Never committed a sin. Jesus as ruler, and is the ruler, never committed a sin. Jesus as common man. When you look at him, and he was the one out of Nazareth, and they looked at him and they said, "Isn't this the carpenter's son? I mean, we've been around this guy. Don't we know his family? I mean, he's just a common man." Never sinned. Never sinned. But yet, he paid the ultimate sacrifice for all these things. He died for the sins of the world. That would be the whole congregation, what we would consider the whole congregation. He died for the priest in the Old Testament. And are we not kings and priests? Do we become kings and priests? He died for the common man. I don't understand why people get this idea that, well, I've just done too much wrong and I couldn't be saved. When you have perfect biblical examples of people that fell short after salvation. I mean, you think about David. He had an adulterous relationship, had a child out of it, it died, and then before that happened, he had her husband killed in the heat of battle. I mean, come up with this big plan to, well, I'm just going to cover my sin up. And goes for a year. Goes for a full year. And doesn't even think about it. I mean, just like, whatever. And then God says, okay, Nathan, go talk to him. You ever sat in church for a full year and God's trying to get your attention about something that you've done? And it's like, hey, how about get that right? And the preacher looks at you and says, thou art the man. I mean, it's just like the preacher's just pointing right at you. That's not the preacher. He doesn't know. That's the Holy Spirit. What about Paul? Before salvation, and he was putting people to death. I mean, I don't know how you couldn't look at Paul, just Paul as an example, and say, yeah, everybody can be saved. But we'll look at somebody that's got like earrings all throughout their ear and blue hair. You know, there ain't no sense in even talking to them about Jesus. You know what's so amazing about that is generally the ones that are so extreme the other way, when they get saved, they'll be so extreme for Jesus. And maybe that's why we won't talk to them, is because they'll make us look bad. I don't know. It's maybe. I was dealing with that, last year? And it's like, come on, put the track on the window. And I'm walking up to people and I'm talking, and I'm not trying to say I'm better than anybody, but it's like, I'm actually talking to people and I'm just asking you to put tracks on windows. It's like, come on. And scared to death. Scared to death. What are we so afraid of? If the Satan was standing right in front of him, we ought to invite him to church. Right? I mean, we should not be ashamed. We should not be ashamed. All right. Anybody got anything? Not everybody at once now. Let me ask this. Who loves this book? Stick your hand up if you love the book of Leviticus. Yeah? Okay, good. Yeah, okay. Right, yeah. This is a young boy's, dream right here. It's like, yeah, fire and you know, we got knives and yeah, I love it. But it does. And I think the reason it's not so much the ceremonial practices is it kind of repeats itself a lot. And I think that's what a lot of people's, with you, it's like, wow, Leviticus, you know, I get it. But they're making bread, right? So that's something, right?
Like you were brought up, Karen brought up, there are some.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why would the priest, what did the priest own? What did they have? What tribe were they?
Mm-hmm. Tribal, yeah.
And so guess what? They don't get land. Where
Mm-hmm.
did that bull come from?
Yeah.
It's going to cost him
Mm-hmm.
something.
Yeah.
Then when he does get something later on, it's kind of his payment for doing stuff.
Yeah.
Because in other portions, that's where they get their
Mm-hmm.
their pay or eat from.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, they're eating because other people are falling short. Isn't that nuts? I'm sitting there and I'm like, wow. they're being fed because these people are messing up.
But it's also part of their pay.
Right.
Because they weren't given land.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And think about how serious they had to take that job. You just aren't going to be like, oh, it's just another day at the office. You're not going to be like that. It's not that way. Yeah. Don't give all the ribeye to God. Don't, just. But It's an interesting book to see, to be able to look at it and try to tie in those subtle nuances with Christ. And sometimes they're pictures of us, how we, are messing up. And it's a help. It is.
Well, also, describe today, people don't comprehend sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Not just in, well, we sacrifice time, money. This was a sacrifice and points to the perfect sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but we talked to a waiter last year. No concept of sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's he?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you say Christ sacrificed himself for you, no concept.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. They're grown up with this mentality that they're perfect angels. Until they turn teenager, and it's like, you're not a perfect But J. Vernon McGee said it best. He said, you know what I was whenever I was born? He said, I was 8 pounds of sin. And that's true. That's true. He said, I come out of my mother's womb, and he said, I was crying. Had no reason. But it's part of it, I guess.
Also, another is Satan. No,
Yeah.
we send thought, word,
Mm-hmm.
ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't need anybody
Mm-hmm.
to influence us. Put on
Yeah. Yep. Yep. All right. Anybody else got anything? Brother, would you shut that off?